Hey everyone, welcome back to the live stream. This is Josh Justice, aka Coding It Wrong, and like I always say, after you watch for a bit, you can decide for yourself whether I'm coding it wrong. We are working on a stream together. This is the fourth week, I think, of working on this app. We are building for mobile and web with Expo, and you can check in the URL right there if you're on the stream to learn more about the project. I'm going to pull it up in just a second, but first I'm going to show you on the screen what we've got here. So we have our app running on the iPhone simulator, on the Android emulator, and on the web in a web browser. And in all of these, we're using the same code base using Expo and React Native Web to deploy the same app to all of them. And it's running with native iOS widgets, Android widgets, and native DOM code, all from the same code base. I've had a great experience working with Expo for web in another side project called Surely, a to-do list app. And what we're converting over is a link saving app called Firehose. It's an open source project that I use for myself personally. The UI is implemented in another framework currently just for the web, and we're converting it over to work on mobile and on web in Expo. And we've been walking through all the steps as we go through. So let me remind myself what we've been working on by pulling up the page here. This is that page that the URL is right there. Check it out if you want. Last time we finished deploying the app to iOS using TestFlight. We customized the app icons and metadata on the web and on iOS. And we made good progress towards sign-in, including the screen, access token storage, and sidebar changes. The sidebar changes referring to when you sign in, example at example.com, password, and then you sign in. The sidebar changes, and now you can see some screens that you weren't permitted to see and navigate to before, and you see a sign out link that you can click on to sign back out. So that's what we did last time. How about this time? We're going to finish sign in, including applying responsive design to the sign in page. You can see it looks a little cramped there up against the edges. That button with the rounded edges looks a little weird, so we'll work on that. We're going to fix a flash when starting the app, and I'll show you what that problem is shortly. After that, we're going to implement our first feature. I guess you could say that login is a feature, but the first thing doing what the app is actually supposed to be doing, which is displaying a list of links. And our backend has already been implemented because this is a pre-existing app that runs on another framework. So we're going to connect our Expo web app to our backend to pull up the links and display them. After this, maybe today if we have time, otherwise next time, we're going to work on automated tests for these features and deciding, this first feature, and deciding what to test there. So we're going to have a lot of fun. If you're on the stream, please say hello in the comments, and please ask questions and make comments as we go. And if you're watching a recording later, please jump in the comments on the YouTube video. I said comments for stream. I'm new to streaming. It's called the chat. Please say hello in the chat. In YouTube, on recordings later, please say hello in the comments and let me know your thoughts and your own experiences and questions. So with that, let's dive in. So we need to apply responsive design to the sign-in page. Is that what I wanted to do on my notes over here? Let's do the app flash thing, because that's going to be pretty quick to do, actually. So let me demonstrate the problem. So we are on the app. We sign in. When we load up the app, we go to the sign-in screen, and that's fine. We log in using our example username and password. We're taken to the logged in version of the app where we see this hello screen, this another screen. Those are placeholders we're going to be getting rid of and changing later. And we see our sign out button. Now let's see what happens when I reload the page. Watch closely, and it might be hard to see on the stream. On the recording, you might be able to pause the video or go back a few frames. You may have seen that the sign-in screen briefly appeared and flashed for a second before we went to the signed in version. So signed out version, then signed in version. There you go, it flashes again. So we don't want this to happen. This looks like kind of a flaky experience, like, oh, why was the wrong thing shown to me? And so we need something better for the app to just look smoother as it's starting. And I don't know off the top of my head what troubleshooting technique you might use if you're not sure what's going on here. Maybe I'm a console logger, so I'd probably log things out on the console. But from my experience writing the previous app on Expo web, I know what's happening. And it's not their fault. It's just a timing issue with what's happening here. You may recall, if you watched the last stream, that as we were implementing the access token storage to track the access token, it's actually persisted across reloads of the app. And that's why when we reload the page, it's not just in memory in the JavaScript, we're loading the access token up from storage with some important security qualifications. You should check out last stream to find out. But when the app boots up, we're loading that token up, And then it's only after it's loaded up that the app knows, oh, I can see that you're signed in, and so it sends you over. And let's prove that this is happening by logging this out in the code. It's often a good idea when you have a bug to go and verify your understanding of what's going wrong before you try to fix it. That way you're sure you're fixing the right thing and not putting unnecessary complexity in your code. So let me point you to where I think the problem is, and we'll verify it to make sure I'm right before we fix it. So we created a token module here. And this is what's handling our access token storage, including our storage in a persistent storage mechanism. We have a token provider, and actually let me go back up to the root of the app so you can see that. We are wrapping, outside of our navigation, this token provider, and that's often something you do for providing all kinds of things like React Native Paper, and especially React Context to set up data that is accessible everywhere, accessible elsewhere further down the tree. In the case of our token provider, we're setting up the token and also the indication, is the token loaded, in here. I forget why. We're using is token loaded, the flag already, to know when we should perform the action to load it out of local storage to make sure we don't do unnecessary loads when we don't need it. So this token provider sets up this data. This use token custom hook allows us to access the token elsewhere as well as is logged in, etc. And so let's go down to the page where this is happening. In our navigation, let me scroll down here. So in our navigation is here, and our navigation contents is the main thing in here. And then we say, oh, if you're logged in, here are the screens available to you. And if you're not logged in, here's the screen available to you, the sign-in screen. And so my theory is that what's happening is this screen is rendered at some point when is logged in is set to false, so we get this. And then it's re-rendered when it's set to true, and then we get this. To confirm this, I'm going to do a console log. I'm going to log out is logged in. And you may have seen this before. When you just have a value to log out, I almost always do this. I just use curly braces here to make an object literal where the key is logged in and the value is the value of is logged in. This is basically going to give me a nice label in the output so I can tell for sure that is logged in is what's passed in, because it's a Boolean. I'm just going to get a true or false. You don't want to end up getting confused about a different true or false from a different part of your app. So let's reload the page, and let's say what our theory is. When we're trying to prove a hypothesis, it's good to kind of, I didn't save the page. Let me save that. It's good to kind of form a hypothesis. To restate what I believed before, don't look over there. That's maybe giving away secrets. My theory is that the page will render, and we're going to get is logged in false, and that's just because it hasn't been loaded yet. And then the load of the flag of the token will complete, and then this will re-render with is logged in equal to true. So if we see false and then true, that confirms something about what I believe is happening in this flow. So I'm going to clear this just so we can see it happening. Reload the page. We see, actually I didn't see the logged out version there. It could have been a timing issue. Let me reload it again and see. I don't think the behavior has changed. I think this is just a timing issue. Yep, so in full screen mode, I can see sign in and then hello screen 1. We are seeing this clutter here, these errors related to something. I think not my code. But if I reload it here, we see is logged in false and then is logged in true. So it's actually rendering it out here before the load finishes. Our app renders on the screen quicker than we can load up from local storage. So to find out how to fix this, I mean, we could work off the top of our head about ways to fix this, but I'm working off of an existing application code, Surely, the other application, and I'm kind of just copying over solutions from there. So let me see how I handled it there. I'll just put it up on the screen here so we can dig into it. In my navigation in this app, actually, you know what? I think I put it out here. Token load buffer. This was a component. And what did I do in that component? Token load buffer. I pull up from use token, I say if is token loaded. So if it's not yet loaded, we return a loading indicator, then we return the children. This is a pattern I've seen elsewhere, like in, there's some library for persisting Redux state to local storage, and I saw the similar thing there, where there's some component that basically says, hey, don't load the children yet until this previous thing happens, this data load happens. And so I think this is going to work really well for us. I think our use token is not returning is token loaded yet. So let's find out. Is logged in. It is not. So yeah, let's just take a look at how that happens over here, and then we'll copy that over. I'm going to move this back off of the screen share to not confuse you about what we're seeing, so you'll just see what we're plopping into our Firehose Expo code. So when I look in here, yeah, I basically just see is token loaded is pulled out of the context, and so I see is token loaded just being returned. So we can't tell the data just from is logged in or not, because that just is true if token is null or not. And token could be null if we're not logged in, or it could be null if we haven't loaded it up yet. So is token loaded is going to return the extra bit of data, literally a bit, a Boolean, a 1 or a 0, that's going to allow us to make these determinations. So let's return is token loaded out of there. Now, token load buffer, this component, it kind of feels like I could loop that into this token layer here, but this actually, I think one reason I separated it out is it is React Native specific. So that's one good reason to separate it out. Because I am thinking of pulling this token module out into a reusable NPM package. So let's put app token load buffer .js in my components. And I see here that I have an app loading component from Expo app loading. And we are using Expo, which is a framework built on top of React Native that provides a lot of cool stuff. And let's go see what this is, because I have a recollection that this might not be what I expect it to be. Expo app loading tells Expo splash screen to keep the splash screen visible while the app loading component is mounted. And so this is not something visual that's displayed on the screen. This actually says to Expo, hey, keep your default splash screen up. That might not actually work on the web totally smoothly, but it might do something else nice on the web. But I think on mobile, it still shows the splash screen. But one thing is, regardless of that detail, we won't be rendering the children out until a token is loaded. And so we'll be sure not to flash that. The other thing about Expo app loading, and we saw this before, Expo has been split into these separate packages. And I don't know if I have Expo app loading installed already or not. Let me copy this command and see. Expo app loading. I don't see Expo app loading added, so we're going to add that first. I didn't update my packages before this, so maybe there's a new version of Expo CLI and stuff like that. So this is going to install this package for us. Oh yeah, there, now it's done. We should see it in there. Expo app loading, great. Our Expo app loading is there. We are returning is token loaded from our hook, and we are using our hook here. So this should work. And now we just need to wrap the high-level component. I think it was app.js. So we'll put that out here. Token load buffer. And that needs to be inside the token provider. So what this is saying is navigation won't be rendered at all until our token is loaded. And I think this is going to fix it for us. Let me confirm that, and then I'll do one or more commits. I think actually this logging output is going to continue to be helpful, because I think it's going to continue to help us. So let me say my theory on that. Not only should we not see the screen flashing anymore, but I believe that we will only see is logged in true outputted in this scenario, because we will not render navigation until the token is loaded. In navigation, we'll return navigation contents, and so is logged in should be true already by that point. So let's see first. First, let's see if we fix the root cause. We should not see the sign in screen flashing anymore. And we don't. Let me do it again to make sure. You can check the recording if you're watching the recording later to see if that's right. And let's reload again. We should only see is loading, what is it called? Is logged in true rendered out to the console here. Is logged in true, sure enough. So I think this is working. I do want to try this. Anytime you're doing something different, you want to try it on all 3 platforms if you're targeting all 3. So let's try that now, and especially because I've added a new package. So I'm going to, well, we need to be signed in. I'm going to sign in on my iOS simulator here. I think I got the password wrong. That looks more right. All right, so now I'm going to reload the app. And hello screen comes up right away. And And so what I believe is happening, there's a bit of a white flash there that might be a bug in my code that I haven't looked into. But in general, what we're getting is the splash screen shows, and then the hello screen shows. I'm going to make a note in my notes to look into off the screen, white flash in dark mode. It's possible that I'm not using app loading correctly. So I'll look into that offline, and if I find out that that could be better, or maybe we just render out a dark screen there to make sure it's okay, I can look into that. We need to test it on Android as well. So let me, this is the reload. Oh yeah, reloading here is not going to help because we are signed out, as we should be signed out. I'm going to remove that log statement because I'm going to forget otherwise. And that to do is fixed as well. Hopefully I'll remember to address that in a minute. Okay. I want to get signed in so I can replicate this scenario of what happens when we load up the app when we're already signed in. I think I can do it this way. Splash screen. And we go straight to hello screen 1. So we've successfully fixed this flash that was happening when we started the app. I'm going to, I often do this, not always. I'm going to commit the package change before I commit our specific functionality change. Expo app loading. Add Expo app loading package. And I'm going to do something to kind of separate out these different pieces of what we've built. We've built things incrementally, and just at work this week, my team and I were talking about the value of small focused commits. So let me do that to kind of show that we've made independent things that we might want to change separately. So first, I think conceptually, we have the change in here to return the is token loaded out of the hook. That's what we need first before we could do anything else. So I'm just going to commit that change. Expose is token loaded flag from use token custom hook. So that's one change we make. Then we made the create load token token load buffer component. And then we have, now that that was actually all set up, this is the final step that fixes the bug. Fix app flashing to signed out state when initially signed in. So that's the commit that actually does the fix in the end. All right, so we fixed that flash. The next thing, do I really want to do that in that order? I better do this small thing because I'm going to get sidetracked, because our next part visually, to fix the visuals on this sign-in screen could take a little while. These screens are disposable, so we're going to implement the real screens a little bit later today. But on the signed out screen, so there's visual issues there, but let's come back to that in a little bit. Something that we need to fix is the base URL of our application that hits the server. So last time when we were working on this, we found that Android needed a different URL to sign in, and this was just a matter of a web browser runs in the same machine that's running my backend here locally, so it's accessed at localhost. And the iOS simulator is such that you can access the host machine with localhost. But the Android emulator is set up different. On Android, you need 10.0.2.2 to get to the host machine. So we need to check the platform and switch the URL there. So there's one other thing we need to change for, and that is in production, which is to say when we send the app up to Netlify or send it to TestFlight, we need another URL here. We need to go to the real production URL. And we can detect that using this, I'll type it in here, __dev__. This is a React Native feature that is also available in Expo, that basically when your code is running, if you're in development mode, running the Expo or React Native development server like this, this $dev is going to be true. And in production, when you have a built application for web or for mobile, it's going to be false. So we can say, if we're in dev, then check these two things. And if we're not in dev, which is to say we're in production, what URL should we use? And I can put that in here. And what is my backend URL? I forget. I can check because I have, I might actually need to put that up in the other window. I'm going to put it up on the other screen to pull up production fire hose. I'm not going to show my screen just in case I have personal links in there I don't want you to see, but I'm going to see what the network request is to. And it is interesting. Is that right? Sorry for the delay here. Can I pop this in and not have it be popped out? Let's reload this page. Oh, interesting. So this is actually just running on Heroku without a customized URL. So let me put this in here. I'm just going to type it from over here. Firehose API dot herokuapp.com API bookmarks. Oh no, sorry. Slash API. And yet there's something about the sign in that I did about slash API that might I might want to change. So let me look that up. OAuth login. Default path OAuth token. Use login form. Where did I put that? It was a screen. It was a sign in screen. Path API OAuth token. So actually, yeah, I think I want to change this actually, but let's do this as two separate commits just to make it clear. So yeah, if we're saying that the base URL is this or is this, then in production the equivalent would be this. I'm going to make a to-do here for myself. To-do. Add custom domain before sending to App Store in case I switch off Heroku. So when this was only running on the web, it was okay for me to, well, let me say it this way. If I'm using, so Heroku is a web applications backend hosting platform, and that's what I use for my backend for this on my other projects. So if I'm hosting on Heroku right now. The problem with using this URL under Heroku is if I ever switch off of Heroku, this will then break. Now that's not too big a deal for web clients because I can just push up a new web client and the next time somebody loads it up, we should be fine and good to go. But it is a problem for mobile clients because when you publish applications to the server, when you publish applications to the App Store or Play Store, you can't force users to update them. You can't automatically push updates out to the code. React Native has some ways around that, but I don't want to get into those right now. So it's really more robust to use a backend URL that you control. And in my case, codingitwrong.com is a domain I control. And so if I set up a custom subdomain or domain to point to this Heroku app, that way in my code going to the mobile app store, I will be able to control it and be good to go. So my point is herokuapp.com is good enough for the moment. But separately, maybe I'll get ready for the next stream to do it. I just want to get my notes together. I'll add a custom domain. There's some specifics there that aren't necessary. Maybe I'll do some pre-work. But yeah, in any case, it's an important qualification and we'll add more about that next time. So first, let's commit this. We'll say add separate URL for production API. And now I want to make a separate change where, I think I'm going to defer this. There's a reason that I want to pull slash API out of here into here, but I'm going to wait until the features drive me there. And it's going to be our next feature that's going to drive me there. So for now, let's just stick with that. I have an eerie silence because the fan in my computer just turned off. I guess it finally caught up with running the emulator and the simulator all at the same time. So we have a production URL right now. And do I want to test that out? Oh, I'm doing so many things. We're going to do another production build a little bit later, so I will I'll wait on that until we get to the point. Let's do the sign-in page styling now. Sign-in page styling. So on our sign-in page, we are using our React Native paper, nice material design, look and feel. We get these little animations and stuff like that, but it's still not looking great because it's all stretching across the full width, which if you make the screen really wide, that's a very wide text field. The button's very wide. They're all butted up against each other. It doesn't look great. And so what I'd like to do is to provide some responsive styling here. It actually, when I say responsive, I want it to look good for a big screen. On a small screen, it's not bad. I could use some tweaks, but it's pretty good. But we definitely need to make it look better on a big screen. And I want to set up some reusable things where basically I kind of want a content area for my application centered in here. Because in the old Firehose, we had this centered content area. Navigation works a little bit differently because I was using Bootstrap, but a centered content area. And that's useful for a lot of the different pages and stuff like that you go through. Having that be centered there just works out really well. And it scales down nice for mobile. So let's dig into this and find out how we can apply some responsive design to our screens. And did I commit everything that I changed? It looks like I did. I'm going to go ahead and push up those changes. I'm investigating over on my other application how the login works. And I named the screens differently. So where is it? Screens, login form. Screen center column. Okay, yeah. So this is going to be helpful. We have a component called center column.js, and that implements what I just said to center it. I'll just add a qualification that I said before. I'm not coming up with this off the top of my head. I have my cheater monitor over here. The whole project is there. So I stumbled through setting it up, and now we're reaping the benefits by being able to copy this over and work in this new application. And some of these I'm looking to make into NPM packages. So my point is not, if you feel like you're stumbling more a bit through as you're solving problems, I did exactly the same thing. I'm trying to keep this shorter, and this is long enough on the stream. I'm trying to keep this shorter so we kind of go right to the solutions that work. So I'm going to write this out one bit at a time. Export default function, center column. Ah, yes, okay, cool. All right, there's something I had a question about. So we're going to have a center column component. We're going to return. It's going to be a view. And then it looks like I actually need two views. And in the inner one, we're going to do children. So let's find out why we need those two views. We're going to take the children. This, just to make the small changes, I could go ahead and plop this in and make sure that it works and doesn't break the app. Yeah, so let's go to our sign-in screen. We're going to import this center column. Where is the center column going to go? It looks like the way I set this up, it goes inside the screen background. And the reason that is we want the screen background to cover the entire width and height of the screen, but then the center column kind of goes inside of that and centers the insides. So let's put the center column in. I expect we'll have no visual differences unless there's some kind of layout bug or something like that in our app. And sure enough, we have no visible differences in our app. So now we can start applying styling to this to get that centering working. Where is this? Center column. And I just use normal style sheets. Styled components does work well on React Native, and I've seen that on another project. In this one, so much of my styling comes from React Native paper that what I need to do in style sheets is actually pretty minimal, and so just using style sheet basically works fine for me. So we're going to create a style sheet as is common. And first, I'm going to create a column wrapper. Actually, let me create both of these as empty. Column wrapper and column. And those styles are going to go here. What do these do? Let's check and see what these do. All right, column wrapper is going to need a flex 1 to make sure. I have trouble getting that stuff in my head, and especially when it comes to filling a full screen, but something to related to filling the whole container. We're going to do flex direction row and justify content center. And so what that's going to do is it lays out elements left to right, and it's going to center what's in there. And so that we only have one thing, one child to put in there, this column, and that's what's going to be centered. So this flex box here is what's going to cause the centering. It seemed like for the column I needed a flex of 1, and also I have a max width. And I'm going to copy this over. I have a comment here as well. So we're going to set a max width on that column of 640. And I added a comment here on how I came to this. I experimented a lot with different simulator sizes on iOS on my other app, and it seems like the max width, it fits when you have an iPad that's less than 12.9 in size, it fits in portrait mode, just exactly in the width, I think. And it also, when you have a high-res 13-inch screen, which is my personal laptop, how I set it up when I'm not on the screen, and you set a window just to the left half, because I have an app that makes shortcuts to make windows just on the left half or right half of the screen, and it fits comfortably on the left half of that screen as well without being awkward. So I was kind of documenting to myself why that value. So I'm going to save this, and I think we're going to see a rearrangement of the components. And we do. So now you can see we have our contents here are centered. You think about Flexbox, it's this whole container here that's flexing, and so we go, it's left to right, it's row related. This column here is the 1 bit, and it's centered, and it's a max width of 640. And what that means is, when it gets small, it just goes to the full width of the smaller screen. But as we get wider, and you see, based on our previous work, the sidebar pops in at a certain width there. As we get wider, at some point once it's, it looks like I gotta make my window wider. When it's more than 640 pixels wide, apparently that's exactly 640 pixels wide right there, then it just, it stops there, and then Flexbox takes over and centers that content in the middle. So we've got a nice reusable way, and we're gonna reuse this on all of our screens to have a center column that centers all this stuff. So that's nice. So let's, yeah, I'll make that a separate commit. I don't think it's gonna help very much, but it's fine. Add a center column layout component, and then center the sign in content. So that's helpful. That's progress to get a nicer looking sign in screen. Let me see what else I have in my login component here that's going to make it look nicer. I put a title at the top. Oh, there's also a shared styles body padding. Let me see what that body padding is. Body padding 15. Yeah, I forget. I think that's just going to be padding all around it so that it's not butted up right against the top. So let's set that up, and let's follow the same pattern because my apps are designed in very much the same ways. And so the pattern that works in one is going to work in this other one. Not every professional app do what I necessarily do exactly this in, but these two apps as personal ones are modeled very much after one another. All right, I'm just going to copy and paste this over for now, and we'll just keep the one style. So we're just setting up a shared style sheet here, and it has a body padding with a padding of 15. That's not very much. You think I could just export the 15, but just having this reusable style makes it nice and simple to reuse. And so basically any style in the app that I would want to use in multiple places, I could put in shared styles there. And it's going to be there. And what we're going to say is screen background style equals shared styles body padding. And if I'm remembering right from the web, padding is the spacing inside of a container. And so this should be 15 pixels inside of the screen background container to shrink everything inside. So let's take a look. It reloads, and now we have a 15 pixel padding at the top. And this, I experimented with different places to put this code, but I found this conceptually made the most sense because whatever else is going on, I do want that padding all around the screen. And I think even when we get small, I think that padding remains. Yep, and I like the way that looks. That for this app, that works well. If I find that it doesn't work well later, I can change that. And let's just check on our other devices as well. Let's sign out on iPhone, and you can see that iPhone is on a dark screen. Let me go back to light mode because that's going to help me see these fields a bit better, just with the way that that's designed. We'll pull up. This is going a little slow. All right, so we're in light mode. Let's pull our app back up. Now I can see a bit better that 15 pixel along the side and along the top. And let's see, signed out on Android, 15 pixels. That's great. So let's add that. We'll just do separate commits. Add shared body padding style. And then we'll say add body padding to login screen. And you could say, why not just put that in the screen background component? But this is kind of separating out concerns. I don't know for sure that every screen in the app I'm going to want that padding in, so this lets me find out for now if I need it, and I can add it in later. What else do I have? I don't know if I want that title there. That title was something specific to Shirley, but I have the inputs and the buttons. And there's a button group there because there was 2 buttons. In this case, I just have 1 button. Yeah, so let's add that shared style. So this shared style, button spacing, margin top 10. So whenever I have buttons, I don't want them bumping right up against whatever they're under. I want 10 pixels in between. And on my other app, I set this up in a bit of a different place. Well, there is that button group. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring it over. The button group is nice. I'm going to hold off on some of the other styling of it until we need it. But yeah, let's set up a button group because this is a pattern that I already know is going to work in my app. I have this common concept of a button group. It's kind of modeled after old Macintosh and current macOS dialogues where you have buttons aligned to the right there, at least when it's big enough. But it's common on mobile to have them kind of go from top to bottom. So let's set up this button group component. And I'm copy and pasting a lot of components over. And if I feel confident enough about this abstraction, I might eventually get to the point where I am putting this in a shared library as well. But there's some overhead to shared library, so copying and pasting to make sure it works in another context as well can be a good idea. Let's take a simple approach to this. Import function button group. And we're going to have some children under there. Return view children. So we just have a wrapping view. I'll go ahead and import that view from React Native. There's nothing to import from React Native paper there because it's just a plain view that we're applying some styling to. And we'll say style equals styles button container. And now we'll pull in style sheet. Is that flex direction, login form, button group? Huh. I'm not actually sure. Responsive styles button. Sorry, I'm looking into things over on this other side. Shared style queries. Yeah, you know what? No, I put that on the button. This is interesting. This actually, yeah, I might need to move some things around here as we expand things out as we go. Yeah, button group, I actually don't have anything to add in the styling at this point. So I want to not save that. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this in shared styles for now. I'm going to say a shared button style, margin top 10. Am I even using this button spacing style in here? Let me see. This might be a value that's not actually used anywhere. But that's shared styles. You know, I don't know. So let's just say button margin top 10, and I will find, because I have my cheater code to compare to, I will find I need this as I need this. And you know, only copying over what you need is a great way to minimize things. So I have a shared styles button. So let's stick with that for now. That's probably fine. And we'll say button style equals styles shared styles button. So this should add the padding to the top of the button. And now we have a padding to the top at the top of the button, padding at the top of the button, padding at the top of well, it's kind of a bigger padding at the top of the button. What if I take that out? Maybe I'm going crazy. What's going on? Oh, it's because of this text, this error text in here. That's throwing things off. All right, let's go and address that first. So depending on the platform you're on, that error text box collapses down or not. And so we would like consistent behavior here. And so let me see how I did that on the other application. I made an error message component. Yeah, so let's make an error message component because that's not built in, I don't think, to React Native paper. And so I want a reusable way. Error messages should look the same all throughout our app. And so let's define those in a common way. So we want import text and with theme from React Native paper. And the reason we do this is we're going to say function error message, and then we're going to export default with theme error message. And we've seen in previous times that this is a way to get the theme passed in, and we're going to need the theme for light mode and dark mode. Yeah. So, all right. So const error message style equals color theme dot colors dot error. So apparently there is an error color that may differ from light mode and dark mode. So we'll be able to check this and see whether it differs or not. We're letting the theme define what that color is. So we're going to center the text, and we'll say margin 10 just so it's not butting up against anything. And then we're going to return children, and so if there are any children to the error message, then we're going to return text style equals error message style. I'm going to go ahead and add this in because it seems like I needed it. Well, let me just make sure on the other side that I'm actually using this. Error message, error message. I'm trying to decide if I want to pass in a custom style prop. And you know, it looks like I'm not currently using it. And if I do, we can use it later. So just to keep things simple, I mean, this is not a reusable component library. Let's not accept a overriding styles in there. We'll just use our styles. And then we say children. So what this is doing, in addition to styling the visuals of this text, is basically saying, putting the conditional in, where it's like, oh, yeah, if there's no error message, oh, I got to pass in children. So if children is falsy, which is to say if children is null or something else is false, I think empty string might pass as well. If it's falsy, don't render this text. So don't take up any space at all. You basically get null returned and rendered. Children have to be null to make that work. But if there is some text in there, then we return it and we render out a component. So this should handle the case where things weren't collapsing on all the platforms. So my expectation, well, I gotta use this first. Import error message from, sorry, I have to type this out. I use Sublime Text, not as classy as all y'all people with Visual Studio Code. And so we're just passing an error message. Because the conditional is handled in there, I don't need to handle the conditional out here, because error message in my usage of my app is always something that I want to hide if nothing's present. This way, this code is just a bit more unconditional and simple. So my theory is that all of that space in between is going to collapse on all platforms now. And now, sure enough, the button butts up right against the text in all of these places. So let me commit that change first before we commit that buffer change. We'll say add error message component. Okay, so now we just have using error message on the screen. And let's try it out actually, let's make sure. So if I just try to sign in without an email or password, I should get an error back. And we get an error message. This one's kind of long, and I've said before that this is an error coming from the server. And if I wanted to change it, I would change it on the server, but that works out fine. And let's make sure it looks good on all platforms. Oops, I have not reload. No, that's right. That's right. Yeah, having the button right up against that makes sense. When I sign in, I get the error. When I sign in, I get the error. So that's looking great. Now we have the share styles with the button margin on the top. And so now I can apply that here. I can say style equals shared styles button. And now on all platforms, we should get a consistent margin in between. So margin, reload. Takes a little second because it's emulating. Not emulating Super Nintendo, we're emulating Android. And now when I click the error, it shows up. There's a little bit more space there, but that's fine. I don't mind that at all. I'd rather do that than over perfect it. So this spacing works out great. So now I can say, and I'm going to do this as one commit now, add spacing above sign in button. All right. So let's see if that was all that we had for here. Sign in button, button group. let's see how things look responsively on here. Yeah, just looking at this, this feels like my Shirley app that I use all the time. It's kind of using the space well. As we get smaller, it uses it well and looks good. Sign in stretches across the whole width. That may change later when we add some more advanced button possibilities, and I want to save that for our next feature. So let's stick with this for now. All right, we've got styling to the sign-in form. It's responsive, it looks good. It looks finished to me. It looks great. It's something I'm proud of. If you're a style perfectionist and you don't want to just use React Native paper out of the box, you might want to do something different. For me, this is great, especially for side projects. Yeah, okay. So there's one other thing I would like to, this feels like a good stopping point to publish and see what we've got before we go into that building that link feature. And so let me show you one more thing. In our previous deployments, when we would deploy the app to App Store Connect, Apple would prompt us and they would say, hey, you need to tell us if you're using encryption that's controlled legally by the US, et cetera, et cetera. And I would say, after having done security research to make sure that I was saying the right thing, I would say that in my app, I am using encryption just for basic uses, so it's exempt from any kind of controls. You can actually configure this in the config file. And let's see if I did that last time. Yes, in iOS, I said config uses non-exempt encryption. And so what I believe this will do will result in when we publish our app to Apple, it will just show up automatically and be ready to go. And we won't need to do that manual step to be able to publish things. So let me actually, I want to show this, get my, I want to get my iPhone, my physical iPhone showing up on the screen. This is not me, I want. Oh yeah, I gotta plug in my phone. Hang on. We got so many of me going around here. It's too many. Gotta get rid of this. Y'all are patient enough watching me. Let's pull up my iPhone 12. So this is my physical iPhone hooked up and connected. And we've got Firehose on here. And when I pull up test flight on here, it says version 1.0.02. That's the version that's deployed. So I want to deploy a new version of the app to production on web and on iOS. And one of the things we're going to be doing is testing the URL, testing to make sure this URL works correctly. And you know what? I just thought of one other thing. So before I deploy that, I want to test out this production URL from locally so that I don't need to do a build. Well, you know what? The web build is really quick. So I'm going to test this out. In my case here, I feel that this is safe. So I'm going to test this out, publishing it to Netlify. I'm going to remind myself by looking at the README how that publishing works. Release to web, and it's yarn to deploy web. And this should do a build of the application up to Netlify, my front-end hosting platform, the one that I use. And from this, we should see the app running and looking nice with this latest look and feel. And I should be able to log in with my real production username and password and confirm that URL is working. And we should be able to see it in the, what do you call it? The network tab of the browser. Because that example at example.com username won't work in production, and my real production username won't work locally. So web publishing is happening. We can get app JSON set and ready to go. So Netlify goes live pretty quick, and we're up. We get the URL. So let's pull it up. Here's Firehose. And let me go ahead and sign in. I don't think this is gonna expose any of my passwords, but let me say, yeah, I'm gonna pull it in from up here. Links pin on screen. Oh, no, that's the database. 1 second. Links.codingitwrong.com. All right, so this is up hiding off the side. But so now I'm on Firehose Expo. I'm going to log in with my real username and my real super secret password. It's long, so you can't guess it. And let's see if the sign-in works. It does. The app signed in. I think, yeah, no, there it is. There it is. Firehose API Heroku.app.com, Heroku.app.com API OAuth token. And I got my token back. Please don't inspect my token. No content is showing up yet because, again, we haven't implemented the content of our application, but I'm successfully signing in with my production credentials. And let me just make sure example doesn't work. This is what I was using to sign in before. It fails. So I think we're successfully using the production URL, and we're good to go. And we've got that nice look and feel. So now let's get ready for the iOS build. And I'm so glad to be looking at the README, even though we're doing this every week, because I see a reminder here to release to iOS, increment the build number in app.json. So this, you may remember seeing that Firehose was 1.0.0 build 2. We're going to bump that up to build 3. Bump build number just to get that committed. What do I do next? Run yarn build iOS. And after this, I'm going to upload the IPA file to test flight. So the difference, I got to get this login steps. Yes, login is me. I'm going to watch this because there was a prompt. I researched it. I was not able to find out how to skip this setup push notifications prompt. So I might be doing something wrong. So I don't know. We'll find out. While this is building. So what are we accomplishing with this uses non-exempt encryption flag? So in the steps here, I say run the build command, and once it completes, upload the file to test flight. But this is actually not a complete list of steps. Previously, what I had to do is keep checking App Store Connect until the app was uploaded, and then manually go and put in the encryption thing. That was the difficult thing, is once things were out of my court and I had to keep hitting refresh, refresh, refresh to look for something to indicate, and that just really slows down the process. If this flag is working the way we expect it to, what happens is after we upload the app to test flight, we're good to go. It is going to show up in our test flight in our devices and be automatically approved as soon as Apple runs it through some automated processes. So that's going to make our build process smoother. I'm going to go ahead and get logged into App Store Connect. But other than that, we're going to be good to go. Probably it's going to prompt me again. And we're going to let, please remember me. As we've seen in our previous streams, the iOS build takes a while. When I'm streaming on OBS, it probably takes even longer. And so we're just going to let that run while we work on other things. I am remembering, though, that I need to not build anything while those things are running. I need to not make any code changes because I get nervous about whether I'm going to break something because the JavaScript build step happens later. I can add new components, though, that aren't hooked in anywhere. I think that will be safe. I'm just pulling up test flight. This is where we see we had build 1 and then build 2 where we added in the icon. And we're going to have a build 3 once this process is done that is going to have login actually working. And we'll be able to confirm actually in the real build application that that storage of tokens in a secure place works successfully. While this build is running, let's go ahead and talk about what's next. And this might very well, especially seeing the time we have, this might very well be the remainder of our time together. So in the running production version of Firehose, well, this is my locally running version of the old framework that was being used for the front end here. You can see when I first log into the app, I'm taken to this unread page. And on the unread page, a few things are going on. I have a list of links that show up. They have a title, they have a URL that they go to. When I click on them, on the web, it opens in a new tab. And this is only on the web, so that's where it does it. You can see a little bit of other information with the link. There's sort of just the URL of it, the main domain name of the site there, sort of a short form. There are some tags added to it that I can click to go to a tag. I can mark a link as read. I can edit it to get the details of it to make changes, and I can delete it. And so we have a number of features here on this page. And we also have a URL to add. So there's a place here where we can paste in a URL, click add, and then it adds it in. We also have pagination if there's more than one page full of unread links. Do I want to do pagination on mobile? I might not, because I usually don't have so many unread links. I think for this mobile-focused app, I might make the unread list not paginated. So we'll see when we dive into there. All right, so thinking ahead, so we want to make our unread links page. And I think the first thing we want to do is just to retrieve those links from the server and list them out. I think that's going to be the best, simplest thing to do. So I want to go first get the functionality working and then style it afterwards. I might even use some placeholder data to start out before we pull in the real data. So I'm going to start coding this out, and I'm going to try to do this in such a way that's not going to mess with the build that's happening now. I guess really it's going to be a new screen. Is it links / unread? Let's think about this. Read, links / read, links / unread. Yeah, I think that makes sense because then tags is another thing. So / tags. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's say this is a folder, links. We'll call this unread screen.js. And we're going to have an unread screen here. And now we're at the point where I kind of actually want to model the screen a bit more after the sign-in screen rather than anything in the other application, just to see how that works. So let's go through here. I'm just going to copy over the component itself. We're going to make sure to call this unread screen. And what do I need? I do want the screen background, so let's copy that out. Ooh, I see that there's some text here that I'm not using anymore, but I'll make that change a bit later. So I want a screen background. Turn screen background. Do I want the body padding on this screen? I think I do. That's going to be going out 2 levels. So that screen background is going to have the body padding. I'm not going to invent new styling at this point until we get it working, but basics that I know I need to work, I can go with. I do want things in a center column as well. That's going to be, it's possible that that's universal across our whole application, but it's easier for now until I'm sure to replicate the center column component across the different screens. So now center column, and currently I have the title there. So let's add a title in. I believe, let's check the React Native Paper components. I believe there's a title component. Typography title. Yeah, and so that's just import title from React Native Paper. And as I mentioned on a previous screen, using the text components from React Native Paper is going to get us theming already. So we'll say unread. So that on a dark background it'll be light text, on light background it'll be dark text. So that should get our title showing up at the top of the screen. If we weren't doing a build right now, I'd go ahead and wire the screen up and show it so that we could see it, but I don't want to interrupt this build, this iOS build that's happening. Usually I do iOS builds when I'm at a stopping point for the day, and so I can just leave it running while I'm doing other things and check on it to finalize it. But for the sake of the stream, I want to show the build happening so you can see it happening for real. So what else should we scaffold out? I mean, now is an occasion for us to take a look at what components React Native Paper offers to figure out how we want to replicate this list. Because the kind of paradigm of Bootstrap, the style framework here, doesn't apply exactly to React Native Paper. So in React Native Paper, there is a list. And list has list items. And I'm familiar with this from a few different material design frameworks across different web frameworks and libraries and mobile ones. That this list is for a list of things. And so this seems like a good idea. This seems like probably what we're going to want to need. There's sections, don't need it. Subheaders, don't need it. Icons, we might put something in here, but that's not mainly needed. And not accordions. I think this will just be a simple list of list items. And I'm not going to put it in a flat list yet. We'll wait until we get data coming down from the server, I think. So we got a list there. And this is going to be a list item. List.item is how the component works. So what are the properties that are relevant? Title and description. So title shows up at the top and description shows down below. Interesting. So the exact details of how this works is probably going to be different than in this Bootstrap framework. For now, let me just say title is, say, my bookmark. And let's just stop with that. I think that's going to be a good starting point for the list item. So that's going to work in there. I don't know if we need an icon. And I don't know if Well, let's see, like this, how to get these multiple buttons. That paradigm doesn't quite work. I know in my, I had some drop-down menus is something that I used in my other React Native paper app. So that's something that we could consider. I don't want to get into that too much right now, though. But I think something I want to do is I want the whole item as a whole to be tappable and for it to perform an action. So let me look into how to do that. There is an on press, so that's good. Say on press, and we'll say list bookmark list item press. I imagine this is going to wrap that. Just confirm that we can get pressing of that item working. And this is actually what we're doing right now is a lot more similar to how I really build out an app from scratch when I'm exploring something I haven't done before and I'm trying things out. I say, well, let's get the basics working before I do too much complicated wiring up of things. Actually, I see that I've imported React Native paper twice, so let me combine that together. So now we have this list item with a title and an on press. That's going to be good for now. Let me see what else. Do I want to do that description? I guess I could do this description for the short version of the link. So let's say description, and we'll say codingitwrong.com. Now I might need to change that. This is something that I've seen with material design list components, is sometimes you need to make changes depending on if it's 1 or 2 or 3 things inside it. And I'm not totally sure off the top of my head how to best do that in React Native paper. This didn't come up with my to-do list because to-do list was just a text of the to-do name, at least how I set it up. So I don't mind if I need to totally change how this list item works going forward. This is building the simplest thing you possibly can first. In this case, the list. So I see that the build is still happening. We're still bundling. So I'm going to let this iOS build keep happening. Now we're copying resources. That might be getting close. There's a left icon. Let me just browse and see if there's anything menu related showing up in here. Title style, description style, number of lines. Okay, could be helpful. List accordion. Yep, not totally sure. I could put a little icon for each bookmark, but that seems excessive. That is not really helpful for here. We just have that list. For some reason, I don't want to put in the add text box yet because I do want to build one feature to completion at a time. So just having this unread list have a list of links that are clickable is already going to be something that's helpful. And actually, an important thing, important tip that I found in building a side project is really quickly moving it to the point that you can actively use it. Because when you're building a side project, it's easy to lose motivation. I'm doing a live stream series, so I might be motivated to finish it. But for when I'm not, I want to make it useful. And so once my app can display the links that I have, it's useful because I might add links in on the web or on my desktop. But if I have links to read, I can pull it up in the app locally and I'll be good to go. So that is a reason I'm not adding in the add bar yet because I don't want to fully implement that until the list is working. And just viewing of the list, even before we are able to mark things as complete. So I've seen the build artifact is now complete. So in the folder that the app lives in, we have a build file. I've deleted my IPA files from previous times. I don't like beer myself, so these are the only IPAs that I get excited about. So now I'm going to drag and drop my IPA into Transporter. Transporter is going to attempt to upload it. Incidentally, I'm not sure why in Transporter the app icon doesn't show up on the left here. It did this time, at least up at the top here. But I don't really care whether the icon shows up in Transporter or not. That's not a big deal to me. I care about whether it shows up for the end user. For myself, so that is fine. I'm going to deliver this to send this to Apple. Recall that we've already seen the updated version of the app working and running on Netlify. Now we just needed to get it up to Apple. And to repeat my thesis, I believe that once this upload completes, that's all the steps. I've done all the steps that I need to do. I do need to make sure that this upload completes, but I can just leave that in the background. As long as my computer keeps running, I can walk away. Maybe I'll just put this upload here so y'all can see it. Let me shrink this a little bit, and that'll kind of indicate for us whether it's processing and verifying. I'll go like that. I'll just fit this in nicely. Great. But now we're at the point, now that the IPA is done being built, I feel comfortable changing the code and adding in this new screen. So while we're watching that and waiting for that to happen, let's add in this new unread screen to our navigation. And we're at the point now where we had this hello screen and another screen. I guess I'll just drop it in real quick first to make sure it shows up before I remove these others. But let's just do it real quick. Drawer screen name equals. I'm wondering about something about the nested routes and if it's going to cause an issue, but I think it's actually fine. So unread component equals unread. So we need to create an unread component, and we're going to copy and paste this whole structure. We're creating a stack navigator so it can have a navigation bar, and there's the possibility of multiple screens underneath it. I don't know if we need the multiple screens in this case, but we're going to find out. So we're going to call this unread stack. And unread is header, 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 custom navigation bar. And then there's just one screen underneath there. This is unread stack, unread stack, unread stack. And this is called, we have a better name now, unread screen. Unread screen. And the title is just going to say unread. We don't need to say links because that's the whole app that we're in. So we need to import the unread screen. Now that we do this, I believe what will happen is when we're signed into the app, we're going to be able to be taken to that unread screen. And we'll see if it displays okay or not with that sample bookmark. So let's check on the web first, just because, I don't know why. I'm biased towards the web. I love the web. Oh, I'm not signed in, so I need to sign in. I got an issue. Oh, I got some errors here. Let's see. None of these files exist. Oh yeah, it's because it was a nested folder. Notice screens, links, unread screen. You'll see why I do that in a minute. Notice over here, Firehose links delivered. It's uploaded. So I think we're actually done. I'm just going to quit out of transporter. And I'm going to keep an eye. Oh, where's that go? There you go. No, let's put it there. I'm going to keep an eye on my personal phone here, and I'll pull it up when we're done. But I expect to see Firehose links 1003 pop in there at some point. And I think we saw last time that it's actually set up to automatically download. So that's nice. So we'll be able to test that out at that time. So I fixed the URL importing unread screen. I think we'll have better luck this time. Oh, no, the relative URLs in there for center column are broken. And that's because we need to go from here out 2 levels to get to components. But yeah, so it's just the center column import that was wrong. And that's going to resort it. I think that's better. We're going to log in. Now we're taken to the unread screen. Unread, unread, unread. And there's my bookmark. And so I can see already that that unread title is not needed because in our new paradigm here with React navigation in this header bar, that is the title already. We don't need another title there. So let me just remove that out. No harm, no foul. That's going to automatically reload on the web. Unread title and then just my bookmark. It may look like a bit like it's floating here when we don't have any other UI controls, but it's just centered in that center area. Let's take a look at see on the other platforms. So in here, I'm going to say example at example.com, password. And I've got my bookmark. And you can see when I tap on it that the area that highlights there is just the area. I see the bookmark list item press was logged out over there, so that's nice. Our click handler is in fact happening. Nice, good looking sign-in screen. My bookmark. Great. Something well, I don't know if lists in React navigation, I mean, in material design, usually have some things wrapping around it, but I don't want to get too hung up on the visuals right now. I want to, just like we did with the sign-in screen, I want to save that for last. The things that were easy to plop in, like the center column, are good. So let's go ahead and plop this in, and I'm going to do this in one commit. I'm going to say add. Sometimes, what terms do I use for this? Like a static unread links screen. And something I remember just now is the link for the URL to go through. Actually, we customized the URLs before. Remember /hello, /another. But for unread, it looks like if we don't customize the URLs, it just puts the full capitalized component names or route names in. And that is not what I want. So I want to go and configure, as we've done at a previous time, the linking for this. So we say, so configure the linking for the unread screen. We need to set the initial route name, which helps in case you're reloading the app, which is going to be unread screen. And then what are the screens, the individual screens under this stack? And it's unread screen. And for unread screen, the route is links unread. That's the URL we have on our pre-existing web application. I like that URL, and I'd like to be able to use that. So we're just configuring here. This is the URL, the path to use when you're on that screen. I reload, and sure enough, it says links/unread. So I'd like to actually include that in the previous commit. So I just have my little shortcut here, but it's git commit amend, basically. Now that's included in that commit. And the next thing I'd like to do, I'd like to remove these other placeholder screens because we don't really need them anymore. There was that drive down to screen 2, but I know how to do that from Shirley, so we can just remove that. So let's remove the linking for these. Let's remove the stacks for these. Another stack. We do have the drawer, and now we just have linking, our unread stack, and all our sign-in stack. Oh, that's interesting. Why is unread up there when the drawer is there? Get drawer type for breakpoint. This stuff, actually, this is not organized right. This drawer stuff relates more closely to the navigation contents. So now we have all of our stacks up at the top. Oh, and now we have some things we can remove. We don't need to use navigation anymore. We're not styling any React Native paper stuff directly, which is good. That means that the focus of this file is narrowing to just be navigation related stuff. We don't need screen background in the screen because we're not defining any screens directly, just importing them. So let's have another commit for this. Oh, what have we done wrong? Can't find variable hello. Where am I using variable hello? Oh, these drawer screens configured here. So yeah, we don't need those anymore. Now unread is the only thing in this mode, plus we have the sign out link that's configured separately. All right, so maybe now it's better. Yeah, now when we're signed in, we have the unread screen and we have the option to sign out. So that's good. So I'm going to commit this. And we'll say remove placeholder screens. So now we have no more placeholder screens. We only have real screens and routes that are used within our app. So what do we want to do? I think now I want to get clicking a link to go to a URL working before we make that this data dynamic pulling from the server. I'm not actually sure how to do that in Expo and in React Native. I know I've seen something like it, but so let's look and see. Linking from your app to other apps. Using web browser instead of linking for opening web links. So yeah, so this web browser is often it's a better option because it's modal within your app and users can easily close out of it and return to your app. Well, I don't know. Let me take this one step at a time. I actually want to see it and visualize it because React Native's linking.openURL is going to open up, take you over to the web browser in mobile. So let's try that first because I think that's the simplest option. And this is nice to kind of address this before we move away from the hard-coded data. Only applies to projects with native code exposed, but then this said use React Native's linking.openURL. Let me just look through this in the page. I have to use linking at openURL, but actually it's Expo-linking. So that's interesting. They didn't say, oh, let me say Expo linking. Yep, so we need to install that. I'm pretty sure I didn't see Expo linking in the list. So let's add that in. I even like the fact that this is a separate commit because, you know, previously we're just putting things on a screen. Now we're actually adding in an Expo dependency to make this linking work. So that feels like something that's separate. Feels like something that's good to have in a separate commit. And we are going to tend to have a lot of commits like that early on in the project as we're scaffolding things out. Linking use URL. Open URL. Yeah. So we want to say linking.open URL. That is good. So go to my website. We have some duplication here and here, but that's okay because this is hard coded. Once we actually have a full data coming back, we'll be able to remove that duplication at that time. So let's take a look and let's start, just because React Native defaults to mobile, let's start on mobile here. I'm going to reload it just to make sure, I'm not positive that automatic reload happened. And so let's see what happened when I click on my bookmark. So it pops over to Safari or your default configured web browser. I imagine on my personal phone, it defaults to Firefox, and I imagine it would open up Firefox instead. And you can tap Expo Go to go back. Now, how about on Android? Let's reload it. Tap on it. It opens up, I don't know the right term for Android, but it opens up Chrome. I mean, it opens up a separate application. A little while just because of the setup, but codingitwrong.com is showing there. Let me go back and just tap it again now that I'm through that Chrome setup. Goes over to Google Chrome. So that's looking good. Now let's check on the web itself. Still not sure why it's the Expo favicon that shows locally, but it is the Firehose favicon that shows correctly publicly there. And so that's all in good shape. Let's check this out on the web. Okay, we're here. Click on my bookmark. And it goes to Coding It Wrong. And in this case, it goes in the same tab that I'm in. Now, that's often a matter of interpretation, what you want to do. Let's see what happens in my pre-existing Firefox application. It opens in a new tab. I've gotten used to that, and that's worked pretty well for me, because sometimes I drill multiple levels deep, etc., etc. So I feel like I would like that still to open in a new tab. So let me see if I can find out how to do that. I'll go ahead and make this commit first, though, to make sure we're good. Add Expo linking. We'll just add that separate package. And then we'll say link bookmark to open URL. And let's see here. New tab. Let me just Google this. We're going to say React Native Expo web linking open URL open in new tab. How can I open an external link in a new tab in React Native? You can only use the window open function in the web, or you can create a custom linking from React Native Web. Oh, that looks complicated. Let's just browse through a little bit more and see if there's any reference to tabs. Well, you know what? I think this other option will work because this is actually something I've done in Surely as well. When you need something to work differently on the web, because there's only APIs like window.open are only available there. So even though linking open URL does work on the web, it doesn't work the way we need it to. So we can add a our own functionality. And I'm going to extract this out to another function. Open bookmark URL. And we're going to say import platform from React Native. And we're going to say if platform.os equals web window.open URL and then blank as the target, which should open in a new tab, else linking.open URL. Now we're just going to say On press, open bookmark that bookmark. This is the example of one of the few times with Expo Web that I found the need to switch based on OS to like have some different functionality for the web. Almost all the code and logic and code paths are shared. So let's, did I lose it? I think I lost it. Yeah, let's open it in web again. I think, oh yeah, I closed the tab that this was in because it opened the link in a new tab. Case in point. All right, so my expectation now is that when I click on this, it's going to open a new tab with codingitwrong.com. It does. So now we can get back where we were going. And just to make sure it still works on mobile, I'm going to refresh on one. I'm almost positive it didn't break on the other. I click on here, it opens up, and it's fine. So this functions like opening in a new tab. I don't yet know. Maybe I do want to use the embedded web browser. I'm not sure, but I don't feel the need to go there yet. I feel like doing other things first would be more productive. So let's commit this. Open in new URL on web, new tab on web. And we're good to go. Now, I actually glanced down at some point here. You may have noticed my distraction and saw that we actually have version 3, build 3 of Firehose downloaded. And we are seeing what we saw last time where it automatically installed. It's already installed and I can just open it. So what am I expecting when I open this? What I'm expecting is the styling, the margins, stuff like that are going to look good on the sign-in screen. And I expect that we're going to be able to sign in with my production credentials, not my local credentials, which would probably fail anyways because this can't get to localhost because there is no web server running on there. Let's tap open. We're on the sign-in screen. It looks good. Let's just switch to dark mode because we can do that easily. Looking good as well. Back to light mode. Now I don't feel the need to type in my example credentials. Let's just go in here into 1Password, links, codingitwrong.com. All right, let's sign in. And you can't see it on there for some reason, but my password is filled in. Let's click sign in, and I expect it's going to work. It accepted it. You'll remember that the build we made still had the hello screen in place. It doesn't have this unread screen yet, but we're good. Now the last thing I'm going to check is I'm going to force quit the app, and now I expect when I open it from the home screen here, it should have my token saved, and so it should open the app successfully. We won't know for sure if that token works to pull down data because we haven't actually ever tried that yet, but it'll at least remember that we're signed in. It does. All right. Cool, so that build worked. And again, I want to draw attention to the fact that we didn't need to go in and apply the missing compliance information in App Store Connect to let us know that it's secure. We indicated in our config file that we're using encryption just for exempt reasons that are okay and don't need special attention. And so it automatically brought us straight through and put it into ready to submit mode, which means ready to submit to production. And it sent it straight to me in test flight, and actually test flight even pre-installed it, which is very nice. If you don't want test flight to pre-install it, I'm sure there's a way to configure that. I haven't looked into it. But we now have our next build working, and all of our login stuff is working and looking good there. So as soon as we get this page of unread links showing up, I'll have something to use for realsies. All right, so we have opening tab and new tab on web, and that's working okay. All right, it's now time to pull this data down from the server side. And how are we going to handle this? So we have a REST-based server side, and so I use that to pull things down. And let me say first about the library that I use to pull that in. Let me just pull this up. I got some levels of abstraction in this to-do list app, so I got to figure out where is the right place to see it. To-do list available. Use to-dos. That's using JSON API client. Great, yes. All right, so everything from here on out, there's nothing specific in this feature that we're working on. There's nothing specific to Expo Web. So this is just about using React and React Native data layers. So for my backend here, whatever you use for your backend will work fine. If you have a REST API, if you have GraphQL, you can use Apollo and other GraphQL options, Firebase, other data backend layers. I'm using something called JSON API. It's a specification for building APIs in JSON. It's a REST APIs, and it actually is set up to work very well with relational databases where you have tables connecting together. It's something that I use. You don't need to use it for Expo Web, but it's what I'm using in this case. And I find it to be, for a lot of things, when you do have a relational backend, there's a lot of pluses and pros because it's very conventional and you don't need to write a lot of backend code. You don't need to write a lot of front-end code. It kind of just works in many different ways. Now, I've actually set up a library for working with JSON APIs on the front end. There's other good ones, I'm sure, as well, but I really wanted to do it my way, and so I did it my way. And what it's called is, let's go to npm to see it. It's called Coding It Wrong JSON Client. Pretty sure I'm coding it wrong JSON client. I'm likely the only one using this. I'm fine with that. I don't mind a bit. Lightweight client for making requests to a JSON API service. So it's got a little lightweight documentation here. You're welcome to try it out. You're welcome to use it. Yeah, 7 weekly downloads. Probably just me. Totally fine with that. But so again, remember, what I'm walking you through here, I'm not saying that you need to use this to use Expo Web. This is just what I'm using. But if you get interested in it, you get interested in the abstraction of my API client, or just of JSON API in general, it could be something interesting to you. So let's add this library in. We're going to say yarn add coding it wrong JSON API client. I'll pull it in. Make sure it's just those two libraries. Add JSON API client library. So now what do we do? So I'm going to follow the patterns in my other to-do app as usual. And in my data folder, I'm going to make a way to access these, well, heck, what are they called? I ran into a thing with my other library, because you call these links or call them bookmarks. And I think I was calling them links, but I think that is a reserved key with JSON API, and I think it was causing trouble. So let me take a look at here and just see what the name is on the server side of the route that we're accessing. Yeah, bookmarks. So I exposed it and called it bookmarks because that was just another term that we could use that wasn't going to collide. So one of the few downsides of JSON API is you need to, well, the conventions are good. The conventions give you a lot for free, but you might have a name for something that collides with a convention. So I think I'm going to call this bookmarks all the way through on the front end to align with that. We'll say data bookmarks. So how can we set up the ability to access bookmark data? I'm going to make a custom hook. So we're going to have use bookmarks for any of our screens or components that wants to get access to bookmarks. So what do we do here? Well, what we're going to need to do is do an import from coding it wrong JSON API client. And what we import is resource client. So what is resource client? Let me check my cheater screen to find out. I'm going to just type it out here and then put the React hook structure around it. We're going to say new resource client. And what do we pass into it? We pass in the name of the resource. What is the resource that we're accessing on the server side? And what it is, as I showed before, it's called bookmarks. So API/bookmarks. So by convention, that URL is just nested under there if we want to get multiple bookmarks. So we say bookmarks. And we also need to pass in an HTTP client. Oh, interesting. Oh, so I have this interesting abstraction here that I settled on eventually to get an authenticated HTTP client. That's okay though. We're going to put this here and then build out what we need. So let me move this out and just say, hey, somewhere in here we need to create this new resource client. And we need to give it an HTTP client. And I'm going to say const HTTP client equals. Yeah, there's probably different ways to structure this. This is not a bad way to structure it. Let me just, instead of moving things around too much, let me just walk through and hear what's happening. So we're going to import use token from token because we need an access token to make this request. So we'll say const token equals use token. All right, we need to make that access token. Now the JSON API client, resource client, doesn't know anything about tokens. It's like, hey, just give me an object that I can make HTTP calls on. So we need to set up an HTTP client that's going to pass the authorization header properly so that the server knows about this. So I'm going to ask you to believe me on that rather than showing like a broken version first. So from there, we're going to say const HTTP client. And what I want is a way to do an authenticated HTTP client, passing in the token. And we're basically saying, give me a client that's going to take this token in. From there, we can say, oh yeah, pass that HTTP client into the resource client, and that handles all the JSON API protocol for us. So authenticated HTTP client, we're going to put in a file. That's going to be in the same folder. Let's save this. Why can't I do new file? There's new file. Authenticated HTTP client. So let's see what's in there. Not too much. Let's write this out one bit at a time. So we're using Axios. We've used Axios before, earlier in this app to do the login itself. And now we need also the base URL from base URL. We figured that before so that if we're on web or iOS or on locally or Android locally or in production, we get a different URL back. So regardless, we'll get that right thing. Then we're going to say export default function authenticated HTTP client. And we've taken the token like that. So how are we going to make this work? What we say is const headers. So by default, there's no headers passed into Axios. But if there's a token, we're going to pass in headers. We're going to set headers authorization to bearer token. And this might not be familiar to you. You might, when you got like a string like that, you might be familiar with doing it this way. The two are actually equivalent in JavaScript. And so actually I think, so ESLint is saying use dot notation instead. So even though it's a bit unfamiliar, this is actually totally valid JavaScript as well. And so then we say return axios.create base URL. Capitalization is different in Axios. It expects URL to be in all caps there. And then we pass in the headers. So basically, we always get an Axios client back. But if there is a token, we configure the Axios client to set that token in a bearer header that's sent to the server. If you're using a different backend and authentication or authorization works differently, you would set this up differently, but this is a pattern that I found where basically if we have a token available, we can set up a client. That is what we need. So back in here, we've got this token. We get the HTTP client for the token. We get the resource client used there. So what else do we need to do to get this working? I think we do need to memoize this because every time we run through this hook, this would be returning a new object here that would trigger further re-renders. We want to memoize it instead. And I can't explain this so convincingly that I can prove to you that we definitely need to use it here, but I'll just do my best. But I'm going to say const bookmark client equals use memo. So we're going to memoize and say return this. So yep, use this value, and then under what are my dependencies? Under what circumstances do I need this to change? Circumstances are when the token changes, because everything else is the same, but every time the token changes to on or to off, we need to rerun this to get a new resource client. And we return bookmark client. So this custom hooks use bookmarks should return a bookmark client, which is to say a new resource client, and that'll give us access to that API from JSON API client. And it's just one that makes some nice conventional requests to us that we don't have to write a bunch of low-level HTTP. So and JSON API client has nothing React or React Native or Expo Web specific, but this custom hook allows us to hook it in so it works well with the React lifecycle, re-rendering as necessary. And I think in our case, we wouldn't be in here if there was not a token, but say the token changed. Maybe we added in token refreshing in the future. This would re-render this and update it with the new token. All right, so we're now ready in our screen to pull that in. And let me just look for an example screen over here so I can see an example of that happening. Yeah, so we're going to say in our unread screen, const bookmark client equals use bookmarks. And notice we don't need to pass in the token there. That's all wrapped up for us in the custom hook. It's because custom hooks compose so well in React. That thing they say about that, I absolutely agree with that. Despite the fact that I said to someone on a Discord today that I don't believe React is perfect, but it's great. If you think it's near perfect, that's great too. I support you as well. It prompted questions in their mind. I did not want to discuss that at that time. I don't think React is perfect. I think there's things that could be better, but I don't know how to make it better, and I'm very grateful for React and Expo and all these things. I hope that's not a controversial thing to say. All right. Import. Interesting. Oh, that's why I did it. Yeah, import use bookmarks from ... data bookmarks. Now, why didn't I just call the file use bookmarks? Well, why didn't I just do a default export? Because when I do a default export, I want to have the name of the file match the name of what I import, because that's a common JavaScript convention. Now, why didn't I just call the file use bookmarks? Well, that's because right now I just have a custom hook in there, but maybe in the future I would add a context to switch it that way. If I did that, the file would no longer just be a hook, it would also have a context and stuff like that. So I decided to say, oh, these are general data modules, and it just so happens that this one has only one named export. We'll come back to the fact that I'm not using a context a little bit later, this time or next time. All right, so we have a bookmark client. So what are we gonna do? Use callback. We probably don't need that yet. Yeah, okay, yeah, there's a layer of abstraction I need to go through here to pull it out. Load from server. Use focus effect. Yeah, let's not go straight to that. Let's go to import use effect from React. We want to use our good old use effects to run a call when this component mounts. But maybe a better way to say it is depending on dependencies. So bookmark client dot, what do I want to do? Sorry, I'm piecing through this. Yeah, there's multiple levels of thing. Oh yeah, so I want to say where. So this is one of the methods in the API. You're doing a search for give me all the bookmarks where something is true. And I want to say filter. Oops, filter. This is part of the JSON API spec to specify a filter. And now let's find out what filter I specified. We actually don't need to look at the code of my existing implementation. We can just look at the calls that are made. So filter bread. It's not actually filter bread. That's 5b is actually the open square brackets, but we don't need to worry about that. That implementation detail is handled by our JSON API library. But I'm saying for filter red equals false. And there's include tags and page number that we don't need to get into right now. Filter, let's go back to this. Red, false. So yeah, give me all the bookmarks where red is false. This is going to return a promise, so asynchronously, as you might imagine. And I'm going to say then bookmark response. What am I going to do with that bookmark response? Let's save this to get it to reformat. And then we'll see what's going on here. I think bookmark client is a dependency. If that changes, and are we getting a warning? Yeah, it says a missing dependency, bookmark client. That's correct, so that dependency will go in there. So we get a bookmark response. Now I'm drilling into my multiple layers of abstraction here. Yeah, I think it's just a setter. So use state for right now. We're just going to do this. We're going to say const bookmarks set bookmarks equals use state. Do I want to start it out as an empty array or as a null? Let's do empty array for now. Yeah, well, that's good until we need something else. And then we're going to say bookmark response set bookmarks equal to by category. Actually, you know, let's console log this. Console log bookmark response, because I want to see what the structure of that data structure is, and it's actually kind of hard for me to see that from the layers of abstraction that I have in my other application. So my theory is that we're going to get a successful response back, and we're going to actually see bookmarks logged out for our application, our local application. not in the screen, but logged out to the log. Oh, now it says, failed to resource, the server responded with a status of 500. So I've done something wrong. So let's take a look in the network and find out. Bookmarks. Yeah, it's making a request to the server. Filter red equals false. Error 500. What is that error? This is something mysterious. No such file or directory. You know what? This is a mysterious error, but I know what's happening. What's happening is this is supposed to be under API/bookmarks. That happens to be how my API is set up in this case. So so base URL. So base URL is coming in and getting passed right into Axios, which is getting passed right into resource client. And so I could add API in here at some point along the way, but notice in, where the heck is it? Here I'm adding API in here as well. And so I actually, this would now be duplication. So what I found is that the /API is actually part of the root, my base URL, and is not just an implementation detail down at this lower level. To get distracted here, let me remove this import that's not needed. Let me just commit that real quick. Yeah, there we go. So that's the only change I'm committing. Remove unused import. Okay, so now back to it. What I'd like to do is to move this path out of here in order to get the unread screen working. And so I'm going to do that and make that the first commit. What I'm going to say is, you know what, the path that I'm passing into the OAuth login is just OAuth token, and in base URL, API is going to go here. Now this is duplication again, so I could remove that out, but I feel like that's probably fine. I doubt that I'm going to need to change that because I'm not planning on changing the backend. And if I do need to change it, I can see that duplication right there. So I think that's fine. So I do want to make sure that I haven't broken anything. My processor is getting pegged here for something. So let me make sure my login and logout still works. Sign out. And now example@example.com, password. Sign in, and it works. Made the request to API OAuth token, and it came in just fine. So now let's commit that change. I'm going to say, I'm going to do S to split, move API. So now with that change, part of the change, the base URL includes the /API. Now we're removing it from there, and that's it. That's actually the entirety of this change, is moving API from there to there. We're making this change before we set up the new code to get it working. We're going to say move /API to base URL. Actually, there's one more thing I happen to remember, which is this. We have a path here, OAuth token. In OAuth login, that's actually the default path. So we don't even need a path passed in here anymore. Let's remove that and make sure that that still works, because that's an unnecessary detail we no longer need. Example@example.com, password. Sorry, that was just a one password thing. Yep, that's working. And I'm going to just amend that to the previous commit. So now I believe that actually our new code, that code that we hadn't committed yet, should actually be working. Because now what happens is when our authenticated API client uses the base URL, /API is now added to it. So I think if we check the log, we're going to see this already succeeding. That's maybe not an indication of a problem. We'll see. That could be a cache thing. Let's see. Let's reload. Yeah, and we get a bookmark response here. Great. Let's check in the network tab. I suppose I could have just looked in the network tab in the first place, but we have bookmarks. Can I make this wider? I can. Preview the response. Here's the response. So we got data coming back. It's an array, and then the first object has an ID of 28 and a type of bookmarks. Links, attributes, relationships. So this is all the stuff that the JSON API format gives to us. And some of it, like links, I don't ever use directly. But these attributes are what we need. And so this gives us what we need. Something important to realize is that in the response data we get, it's nested under data. But I think with console logged out, there's actually one other level. So let me see here. In the bookmark response, we have data, links, and meta. Yeah, that's right. So what we're getting here is exactly data, links, and meta. So we're getting exactly the response date body object back. So in order to set the bookmarks in the unread screen, we should just be able to say set bookmarks bookmark response.data. That should give us the data, which is this array. So we have an array of objects. That should be good. I'm going to save that. Everything should still work fine. I don't imagine anything's happening. So what I'd like to do next is to use the actual bookmarks to output list items. And this is actually to get us real clickable URLs, which is going to be pretty nice. So we're going to say, I could do bookmarks.map, but we all know where this is going. We all know that it's going to be a flat list. So let's just go ahead and look up the flat list docs, because I can never remember for sure. If you haven't used React Native before, flat list is used for performant interface for rendering flat lists, basically vertically scrolling. I think you could do the other direction as well. But I always got to check the docs to remember the API. Flat list. All right, so let's import flat list. We're going to say flat list data equals bookmarks. That's one good reason to start it out as an array so it doesn't cause an issue there. Maybe it accepts a null. Key extractor. I like to put that first. Yeah, so that's in item. It's going to be like this. And what is our keys? Unread. Our key is just ID directly on there. Item.id. And then to go back to the docs, render item, and this is the one that I think it's like named argument item. And so we're going to return a list item as a result. So we can just paste this in there. It's one of the reasons to kind of build something else out with static content first, so that you're doing one thing at a time. Another option would be just to output a text element here and then change it to a list item. So we need a title. So where's the title in here? It's actually the item.attributes.title. That may be unintuitive if you're used to just very simple JSON data structures, but JSON API combines the attributes there so they don't step on other things like links and relationships. So item.attributes title. Now the URL. Let's do the URL here. Item.attributes.url. Now that description, that like abbreviated URL, let's see if that comes back. I might have actually implemented that in the front end. So I'm going to need to copy that code over or re-implement that. So for now, let's just have it display the full URL. That's good enough for the moment and good enough to get it working for me. So this, I think, is going to give us a fully dynamic list of the bookmarks coming from the back end. Let's save and give it a try and see. All right, we have React Native, Google, Google, Google. Very nice. Let's see if that's what shows up. Yep, that's exactly what shows up for the other app, so it's correctly pulling it down locally. Very nice. Do I click this? Does it go to React Native? It does. When I click this, does it go to Google? It does. Very nice. So let's check it out, and let's see, especially with the flat list, I am nervous that I got it wrong and got the flex one wrong or something like that. So let's see how it works and looks on mobile. You always want to test it everywhere anyways. I see that our stuff is showing up, but let me reload just to make sure I've got a full, nice, clean start. And let's see. Yeah, okay, so it looks like the flat list is going to full height, full bottoms. When I've gotten this wrong, the flat list like stops right there. And so as a result, like if you could scroll down, it like acts like it cuts it off. So it is full screen height now. It seems I could, if I had more test data handy, I could add a bunch more and make sure that it acts well at the bottom. That'll maybe be a visual finalization thing that we do. Yeah, but let's reload on Android to make sure we're good on there. Takes just a second. They're there. I think the fact that this doesn't let me swipe is expected Android behavior. I'm not positive, but it looks good. And can we go to React Native? We can go to React Native. Nice. All right, let's commit this. So we took a little detour to build something else that was needed, and that's fine. That's why staging works with Git, so you can add these changes separately. I'm going to add these separate layers as separate commits. Add auth HTTP client module. And then we'll say add bookmarks client. And then we're going to add a component, like say make list of bookmarks dynamic. It's dynamic. It's the real data. I do want to point something out, not to brag about my library. There's no way it's ever going to be used broadly or anything like that, but just to point out what we did and how straightforward this was. We didn't need to build any full URLs. We set up the base URL of our API. After that, all I had to do was say, hey, I want a resource client for JSON API. And the name of the resource that I want to access is bookmarks. Cool, good to go. Seems straightforward. And here, I just was able to query it, this object saying, hey, bookmark client, and what's the filter I want to use? Red is false. Give me all the unread bookmarks. And then I got the data back, and I was good to go. So didn't have to build up complicated URLs, didn't have to define a bunch of types on the front end here. It was nice and clear and straightforward. And as we build up more features in the streams ahead, I think you'll see that it's going to continue to be really straightforward like that. There's upsides and downsides, but that's one of the reasons that I really like JSON API is you can set up conventional backend libraries, conventional front-end libraries, and then in your code, you can just build the business logic code that you need. It's very similar to Expo and Expo Web in that regard, is we're just focusing on the essentials we need to build the application we have, and I just love operating at that level of abstraction. Yeah. So, I have something to surprise you with, and what I have to surprise you with is this. This application is now useful. We're already at the point where this is useful. So what we're going to do is I'm going to deploy this to the web, and then I'm going to get the iOS build started. I think I'm not going to keep the stream going because it'll probably take too much time. And so as of right now, I'm going to get this going. This is the application that I'm going to be using for reading my bookmarks going forward. It's already useful. So you might say, wow, this is really incomplete. Like, the visuals are not quite done on this screen. It's like, well, yep, that's okay. We're getting close. We've got 8 minutes left, so I want to wrap up and actually finish on time or a little bit early for once. But it's already useful. Now you can't add any links from here. Like, well, yeah, I've already got my other front end. I can still use my other front end to add links. But now I'm already at the point where I can be using my new application, my new code. I'm already going to be able to have that home screen icon to be able to pull up and use my links from. So it's already useful. I want to go back to that principle I said before. On your side project, get it useful as fast as possible so you can use it and be motivated. Now in our app, we had several streams worth of setup, so it took us kind of a while to get going. That's because I already had all the nice fancy React navigation and React Native paper look and feel ready to go. And I wanted to show that to y'all first because that's very directly transferable to your applications. But now that we're in application logic functionality, I want to get this useful thing deployed as quickly as possible so that it's useful for me, so that I'm motivated to continue building and making it better and better, to move more and more use cases over out of my existing web app and into my new Expo Web and native app. So we're ready to go. It's useful already. I'm going to push this up. I'm going to remind myself how to do the deployment, and then we're going to be done for the day. And we'll talk about what we're going to do next time. Reminding myself. Yarn deploy web to deploy another version. If you've used Netlify before, you may think I'm extremely strange that I have to run a command to deploy to Netlify. On a previous stream when I set that up, I mentioned that's intentional. The way I set up my apps with Dependabot to get dependencies updates run automatically, and it creates separate PRs, and I merge them all down, that kicks off a lot of Netlify builds. And so for my apps, it works out well enough to have a command to manually deploy to Netlify instead. The fact that I can just say Netlify deploy still is saving me a lot of effort. But yeah, just to save on my build minutes for Netlify, I do it manually. It's building, and it'll be ready in just a second. I am going to go ahead, in case it causes problems. Well, Actually, that looks like I've closed it. I might get an error in here because the token I have saved is not a correct token. Oh no, it showed me assigned out. Cool, so this is the deployed Firehose app. I'm going to put this over to my private screen because I haven't screened my personal bookmarks here. I don't know if there's personal stuff I don't want to say, but I'm going to sign into my app and I'm going to ask you to believe me as to whether it works or not. If I would have been more prepared, I would have been ready to go. I'll drag it back over if the links are all safe for work. Yeah, that's good. Okay, cool. So I'm dragging it back over. So this is our app. This is what we just finished building. And here's my list of links. This is links that we added. I just added this one earlier today. Don't be confused by this trolling title by Jamin Holmgren. He believes the opposite, but he's a troll. But yeah, this is my real links. And so now, even now, it's already usable. I can pull this up on the web on my phone in order to have my links ready to go to pull up these articles. I haven't vetted this article. I don't know if this information is helpful, but it's opening up and pulling up. And we're great. We're good to go. So I'm going to kick off the iOS build now because I want to, even though we just did a build 3, I want to get the build 4 up there because I want it to be useful for me. So we're going to bump the build version to 4. Push that up. Don't actually need to push it up to do the build, but it's a really good idea to not do a build based on something that's not stored in version control. I'm going to run yarn build iOS. And now we're getting ready, and I am just super pumped. I posted on social media that I was super pumped after last time because I could tell how close we were to getting to something that I could actually use. And now we're just so extremely close. In fact, I think I will pull up on the web on my actual phone just to feel really good about it. Let's even pull it up in Firefox because Firefox is what I use. Firehose Expo auto-completing. And there, it's looking really good on the web. Looks like a mobile app, but it's on the web. We're going to sign in. Face ID. Very fancy. I do need to get the URL set up so it'll auto-populate links. Autofill. Sign in. Here we are. We're in Firefox on my real phone. Got my links there. I'll pull up Jamin Holmgren's this time. Tap on it. We're there, and let's just confirm that that's a new tab. It's a new tab. Sweet. So I'm already excited about what I have on the web here locally, but I'm going to get the mobile version running as well. That actually, I actually said yes for push notifications. Let me cancel out of that. That's not what I want. Let's do that build again. Yeah, so this is already working. I could use this to read the links on the web on the computer as well, but I'm going to get my mobile built, and it seems like it's going to be about 10 minutes before that's ready to go up with Apple. I would not like to use push notifications. Really would love to fix it so it doesn't prompt me on that. Maybe I can do that in the App Store Connect or something. So yeah, we are in great shape. Let's go look one more time and see what we got. We have our app, our link sharing and link saving app and reading app on iOS, on Android, at least the Android simulator, running on web, actually already deployed on web, and it's working with my real existing backend, pulling in my real unread links, allowing me to read them. Now we have a lot more to do for this unread screen. We need a way to mark links as read. We need a way to add in new links through a text field where you can paste in a URL in order to add it in. We need to show tags and link to them. We need a way to edit a bookmark so we can change the title and add other notes and things like that, and delete them. So there's a good amount still to do on the unread screen, but the basics are there. And really from this point, it's all about just seeing with React Native Paper what's the best way to configure those high-level React material design components to show this stuff. But really, our platform is done. I mean, you could stop at this stream. I'm not telling you, you can come back next time if you want to see more. But all of the key components of our Expo web architecture are now in place. From here on out, it's all about building out server-side logic and building out UI components, and that's all it is. So we've really succeeded. But one important thing we haven't done is testing, and testing is very important. And I want to show you testing. And so that is actually a great reason, I think, other than maybe some visual tweaks on this screen, I think we need to go to testing next. Because that's the last thing we haven't done anything like before that we're going to want to make sure to do next time. We can also go back to our sign-in page and add testing in there. Maybe even some tests for these components that I'd like to pull out into a reusable library. This could be a good occasion to do that. So next time, visual finishing up of what we have on the unread screen so far. Testing lots of different parts of our application. We may get to do additional functionality on the unread screen. That would be nice to get it to the point that I could do more on it and be more independent on this and not using my older application, my older client and front end. But yeah, that's where we're at. Thanks so much to everybody who joined on the stream. Thank you to everybody who's checking out this recording later. Yeah, and I'm excited. We're just picking up momentum so much, and we're building on here going forward. One more teaser. Next time I'll talk about why I used use state and not use context, and why I think that's the right option for the default case a lot of times, and a coworker who taught me a lot about that. But that's it for today. 6 o'clock Eastern on the dot. I'm ending on time. Thanks for everyone who's joining, and catch us next time as we continue to build more in this app for mobile and for web with Expo. See ya.